All right, we're rolling. Sorry. I'm in pink. So I start. Hi, and welcome to What the Phalange, the podcast where we watch every episode of Friends, discuss it, deconstruct it, and fan over it, one episode at a time.
My name is Quinn, pronouns Zzier or they, them.
And my name is Emily, pronouns she and her.
This week, we're going to talk about Season 1, Episode 10, The One with the Monkey. Aired December 15th, 1994, written by Adam Chase and Ira Ungerleider. I thought we said that I wasn't going to do this anymore. And directed by... I see what you did. Directed by Peter...
It's Bonners. It's Bonners, not Boners. In this episode, the gang commits to a not-so-successful no-date pact for New Year's Eve. Phoebe meets a scientist guy, and Ross gets a monkey. Okay, so hi, Quinn.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. We're very giggly today.
Oh my god.
Guys, I don't know where it's coming from. We had to redo a lot of things already.
I think it's also, we have a much later episode compared to last week.
Oh my god.
And... big announcement, everyone. We have our first Patreon.
Woo-woo!
So big, giant love you to Kayla, who is our first Patreon subscriber, which means that we had our first Netflix watch party this week. So if you become a Patreon subscriber, starting as low as $2 a month, you get to join us every Wednesday right now at 12:15, where we watch the episode right before we record it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we just finished, and now we are recording. It's very exciting.
Yeah, so head on over to our Patreon page, guys.
Yeah. All right. So cold open. This is the first cold open.
Well, first, what's your first impression of this episode?
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, I'm so
Getting
sorry.
right down to business.
Getting ahead of myself. Okay. My first impression of this episode is that I'm so thankful that it's a chill episode compared to the last two episodes. We have so much less to unpack this episode. It's mostly just like funny and silly, and Ross has some great lines, and Chandler has some great lines, and we actually get the first like storyline involving Phoebe, which is really nice.
Yes.
So
and she kills it.
And she kills it, and she's nominated for an Emmy for this episode,
I know,
which is
right?
like wild. Yeah, and so honestly, I'm just happy. Like, I'm just happy with this episode. Also, I really love all the Christmas episodes of Friends. Like, I just find them really cute.
Yeah, I find this such a stark contrast. Like, not yesterday, a week ago, when you sort of pointed out that last week's episode just sort of felt really kind of blue. It kind of like stuck with me, and I have actually been thinking about it this entire week. And it's been such an interesting contrast because, like, I do feel like the last episode even had like a tonal kind of darkness to it.
Yeah.
And then this week, you know, everyone's in all these different colors of clothing. There's like some really wild outfits in this episode. Great. And there is like Christmas lights and colors everywhere. There's a party. Like, there's just...
it's a different vibe completely.
It's so different. And also, this episode is so random. What? There's a monkey that shows up, and then Rachel gets beaten up trying to get a cab.
It's all very weird.
You know?
It's kind of a continuation of the last episode, where at the end of the episode, they cheers, and they're like, and here's to a lousy Christmas and a crappy New Year. And it's almost like it was like foreshadowing for this episode.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it's so true.
I don't know. It's cute. Cold open. So this is the first cold open that happens at Monica's apartment. Ross walks in with a monkey.
Which is just, again, like...
really random.
So random.
But it's also so Ross. Like, Ross is, like, so totally someone who, like, would fill a void in his heart by getting a monkey.
Yeah, it's... now that we're talking about this, like, it just...
like, he's a paleontologist.
Yeah, and it's like, as the episode unfolds, it's very clear what his, like, relationship is with this monkey is actually reflecting in his life. And it's sort of like his not quite midlife yet crisis. You know, it's his, like, post-divorce crisis.
Yeah.
about to have a baby crisis.
Yeah, oh my god. All right, so Ross is a monkey. Monica's pissed about it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Monica's also wearing a dress that is really weird.
What is up with that
it's
dress?
Like, it's buttons all the way up to her, like, neck.
It looks like a timepiece dress.
Looks like a timepiece dress.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't necessarily... Like, I remember there being, like, really long dresses in the 90s. Like, really long, awkward dresses that, like, are kind of, like, medieval style. Because Phoebe wears one later on in this episode. And, like... But I guess I just don't... I'm just sorry for this dress. Like, I don't like it.
Oh, you don't like it?
Oh my god.
Oh,
you like it?
I don't not like it. I think it's like I wouldn't wear it.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of these episodes on this show, a lot of the outfits on this show, I wouldn't wear. But
you would totally wear like 90% of Ross's outfits.
Yeah. True.
But
Ross always loses in the fashion polls, by the way. Thanks.
Well, that's because he's like fighting against Rachel.
That's true.
So yes, so Monica's dress is something special. Honestly, I feel as though I could think of like one or two people in my life who could pull off a dress like this, but that's because they have a whole aesthetic around this,
right?
But mostly it's just a weird dress.
Yeah,
Also,
it's very strange. It's like for casual wear, it's not so casual,
right?
You know? Okay. 3 things you want to talk about in this episode, and then we'll hit an ad.
Oh, wow. Just rushing me along.
Okay, sorry. Did you have more to say?
I wanted to talk about how Ross is kind of classist.
Oh, right. With his habit?
Yeah, where he's like, you reach a certain age where having a roommate is kind of pathetic. Well, obviously, he doesn't finish the word pathetic. Can you imagine being so fucking obnoxious that you're like, having a roommate in New York City, Manhattan is obnoxious? Like, dude.
Yeah, you make a really good point.
Most people who are living in New York City who are in their mid-20s definitely cannot afford an apartment on their own. Like, get out of here.
I know, right? It's wild that he can't afford it and works at a museum.
Yeah. Well, he has a doctorate, right? In a museum, like he's like...
Just because you have a doctorate doesn't mean you're making a lot of money.
True, very true. But like, I feel like he's not just like a guy who works in a museum. Like he's got like a pretty prestigious role in a museum. That happens later on. That happens later on in the episode where they talk about like how he's a doctor in the museum. Yeah,
and I guess like as the seasons grow, you kind of refer to him having published a fair amount of papers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They really don't delve into that part of him, and I kind of wish they did.
Yeah, but that's because every time they try to delve into it, everyone starts like being annoyed at Ross.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, yeah, so that's all I want to say. We can go. The 3 things I want to talk about this episode, oh my god, I don't even know. I didn't
I have a list of like 6 things.
Oh my god, I have a list of no things, so that evens out.
Look at us.
I kind of just wanted to talk about like them as a whole. Like I really love Phoebe in this episode, and I want to talk about Phoebe and David's relationship.
Oh my god.
I think it's super, super cute. I want to talk about Ross and his acting and his like patheticness, despite calling everyone else pathetic. Ross, rude. And I want to talk about a continuity thing that happens that I didn't notice, despite the fact that I've watched Friends so many times, until I went on to Fandom. Thanks, Fandom.
Love
and
Fandom.
It's very good. So that's what I want to talk about. Oh, I want to talk about Janice.
I know. Yes, definitely. So
Same.
you've already passed 3 things. So I want to talk about all those things as well. I also want to talk about Jewish representation in the 90s television shows. I want to talk about, Phoebe specifically, but also the Phoebe and David situation. Mm-hmm. And I also want to talk about Ross's relationship with Marcel.
Interesting. Okay. 2020 hasn't turned out like anyone has expected. For us, the current pandemic left us in an existential crisis, wondering what the heck we're doing with our lives. And when is a better time to start a podcast than when you're not sure what you're doing with your life?
When we finally made the decision to start our podcast, we spent a lot of time researching and debating which podcast host to use. You need a podcast host in order to have your podcast available in a variety of different directories, which is the reason you're probably listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. They all cost money and they all have their strengths. But the reason we chose Buzzsprout to host us is because they are designed for new podcasters.
They have a variety of different tools to support you on your journey towards starting a new podcast. Knowing that creating this podcast is going to take a lot of our time and a lot of our money, we are particularly grateful that Buzzsprout offers an affiliate link marketplace, providing us with partnerships with quality brands that we can advertise. We don't get any money for the advertisements themselves. However, if you use our affiliate link in the show notes to purchase one of the products, we get a kickback at no additional expense to you.
So today we're repping Buzzsprout because we have the first-hand experience to say that it was the right decision to use them. And if you're thinking of starting a podcast because you're also experiencing a pandemic existential crisis, then you should do it. And you should use Buzzsprout and our affiliate link to do so. Following the link in our show notes lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. It also gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan. And most importantly, to us, it helps support our show. Welcome back.
Welcome back. All right. They're in the coffee house. Scene 2, they're in the coffee house. So we get more snippets into Phoebe's singing.
Oh my god. I think this was... Okay, this show is so... This is where Phoebe really starts to shine.
Yeah.
And when David describes her as luminous in this scene, I will say that I think that is very correct.
Very accurate, yeah.
Yeah, very accurate. And I think it's interesting because Phoebe was written originally as a side character.
Yeah, which she mostly is for the first 9 episodes.
Yeah,
of
this
this
is
show.
the first episode where there's a storyline about her.
Yeah.
And just like right away, she just like sweeps everyone off their feet.
Yeah.
Like it's so obvious how amazing of an actor she is and like what she brings to the character.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you just want more of her right away. Yeah. And I mean, she won an Emmy for this episode and
she was nominated for an Emmy.
Okay, she was nominated for an Emmy for this episode along with another one.
I think the other one she's nominated for is also in season 1.
Right. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
You could just tell why.
Yeah.
As soon as they put her in the center, they, you know, down the line start to realize, okay, well, obviously people want more of her and obviously she has a lot to offer.
And it makes such a difference because, not to talk too much about like the show as a whole, but once you've watched Friends and analyzed it as we have, like you really notice that season 1 has a very different vibe than the rest of the seasons. Especially like season 1 and 2 have similar vibes, but then season 3, it takes it to a whole different place. Like season 3, they start more going into like the 3 different storylines and the friends kind of pairing off and to do different adventures per episode. But season 1, that doesn't happen so much. Like there's more like all the characters are involved in a story, or there's like most of the characters are involved in a story and 1 or 2 of them are involved in their own unique stories. So it's like it's interesting that they've done this with this episode where Phoebe has like her own little storyline, but she kind of has the main storyline of the episode. Yeah. Everyone else is kind of doing like there's the gang storyline and then there's the Phoebe storyline.
Yeah, and it's a storyline that, man, it just pulls you in. Yeah. Like Lisa Kudrow does such a good job, and I'm heartbroken at the end of this episode every single time.
I know. It's also, okay, let's talk a little bit about how David right here, he's like talking to his friend about how he thinks Phoebe is so awesome. When meanwhile, Phoebe, from like what the show has led us believe, has just sung like 18 songs about her mother's suicide, and yet he's sitting there being like, this woman is so wonderful. Like,
that's the point. He's so strange and quirky, so like her. Quirky, yeah. They're like meant to be.
Yeah. Has Phoebe mentioned yet in this show that her mom committed suicide around Christmas?
Oh, I don't know.
Because that was a thing that comes up, is that her mom committed suicide like on or around Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely in episode 1 she brings up that her mom committed suicide. But no, I think this is the first time that it's about.
Yeah, because it's interesting because you get a lot of like you get a lot of snippets of Phoebe's past. Like almost every episode, you get like this one-line story of her past, and it would be so interesting. Oh my god, listeners, we have a task for you. If you know of someone, because I'm sure a fan has done this, has like created an ebook or a compilation of her entire history, that'd be really interesting.
Oh my god, should
putting
we just
all
write
of
the
her
fan
stories into one? Yeah.
So David interrupts Phoebe, and then this turns into a very beautiful meet cute.
Yeah.
And she's just so badass the way she just is willing to just call him out.
Yeah.
Or call both of them out. And he's so sweet the way he's like describes everything so specific about what happened.
It's also like super unreasonable of Phoebe. Like,
yeah.
Like it's not like they're like at a private concert and there's like these two people chatting. They're like in a cafe. Like I feel like if there's live music in a cafe, you're not expected to completely stop what you're doing and listen.
I think this is the awkward thing about open mics, is that it's never fully certain if it is an environment that is supposed to be listen only,
right?
Or there can be some amount of talking.
Yeah.
And
but would you call this an open mic?
Oh yeah,
like, I feel like Phoebe has like a gig at Central Perk.
Yeah, but then also like it's so strange because sometimes gigs at cafes are the type that people just listen, and other times they're gigs where they're just in the background being like, you know, ambiance music.
That's true.
So it's always
weird.
Like an awkward thing, right? Like, can you talk, can you not talk?
Yeah.
I mean, you went to a cafe to like talk with your friend,
and then there's live music, and you're like, oh god, what do we do?
Exactly.
Yeah, it'd be very odd. So I don't know if it's valid for me. Like Phoebe must have played in the past in which people are not just listening to her. But the Central Perk they never show it that way, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. We also forgot to mention the fact that happens right before she starts to play, is that, so they decide that they're going to have, so Paolo is in Rome, so Rachel's boyfriend's in Rome, and everyone else doesn't have dates, so they decide that they're going to do dinner.
Just them, no dates for New Year's Eve.
Which is so weird because they then decide that they're going to have a party?
And that doesn't break the pact? I don't know. Yeah, it's strange.
It's weird. Anyways. Okay, so then, I want to mention something. So Max, so there's Max and David, right? Max is the other scientist guy. Max says that he thinks the most beautiful woman in the world is Daryl Hannah. Oh. And so we went and looked up who Daryl Hannah is. And so she was in, like he says, the movie Splash. She was in a bunch of movies in the 90s. But fun fact about Daryl Hannah, she is vegan, and she's an activist, and she actually was arrested protesting against the Keystone Pipeline. So go Daryl Hannah. You're dope. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I approve your crush, Max.
I approve your crush. All right, so next scene. Monica's apartment. They're decorating the Christmas tree.
Yeah, which is interesting because, I mean, she's too controlling. Why is she letting people help her?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Rachel is sitting there and handing
Monica
and like sitting there putting like handing ornaments to Ross, and I think Ross is putting them on a little hooky thing, and then he's handing them to Rachel or something like that.
Right, yeah.
So, you know.
That sounds about right.
And Chandler's being useless as per usual. So.
Yeah. As per usual. Wow, you're really mad at Chandler for his uselessness.
I am. He needs to grow up a little.
He does.
He grows. But right now, you know.
Yeah, but, you know, whatever. So did you want to take this moment to talk a little bit about how it's odd that they are decorating a Christmas tree when Monica is Jewish?
First, I want to point out, that it has been at least a week since the last scene. Because they're talking about how Phoebe has been on 6 dates with David. So that usually means that it would probably be at least a week. It's kind of unlikely that you'd be going on a date every single night with a person. And so...
Interesting. I thought the same thing. And then, but then I was like, they didn't actually explicitly say that. Rachel's like, how has he not kissed you yet? On my 6th date with Paolo, he had already named both my boobs, which is hilarious. And Ross's face is key. But, like, is she saying that by the 6th date, Phoebe should be there when she gets to the 6th date?
I
or
feel
she's saying they've already had 6 dates. But it's kind of hard because they're singing Christmas songs. They're making a pact about New Year's. How have they already had 6 dates? And it's not even Christmas yet.
Okay, I think that what Rachel is saying is implying that the conversation has been that they had gone on 6 dates. And then she's comparing herself where she was at 6 dates in with Paolo. Because he had already, like that, meaning that like at that point they were past that.
So she must have had 6 dates really fast.
Well, yeah, it's possible though that like, it was the beginning of December, or I mean, when's Thanksgiving in the US? Because people start putting up Christmas things basically like a few days after Thanksgiving in the US.
Yeah, but no, because like she's singing Christmas songs and they're making a pact about New Year's. So I feel like if you're making a pact about New Year's, you're kind of talking about it at least, like you're not talking about it like a month in advance.
Right.
Okay, we're definitely getting way too much into this right now.
Debate is pretty intense.
Anyway.
Anywho, I guess I just wanted to point out the amount of time that had passed, because I think that we don't always think that much time has passed between
That's true, yeah.
each scene. Anyway, I guess it also means that Ross and Marcel have like, it's been a week or two since they've had, like, Ross has gotten the monkey.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it just sort of puts things into, like, I guess a bit more perspective.
Yeah, okay.
Some time has gone. Things are, like, settling in and whatnot.
Right.
But, yeah, I do want to talk about them,
decorating a Christmas tree.
Yeah, because it's interesting. In this episode, they actually don't, I think, even say the word Christmas. They only talk about New Year's, but there's all these like kind of Christmas decorations around, which I find is interesting. It's more of like a New Year's episode than a Christmas episode.
Yeah.
But what's particularly interesting is that Monica and Ross are Jewish.
But my question is, so we find that out later.
Yeah.
Because we don't know yet that they're Jewish.
Right.
But do you think that the writers knew that they were Jewish? And this is a continuity error.
Right. That's a good question.
But Monica decorates a Christmas tree in several other episodes later on.
So I think the point here is that we know for certain as the seasons progress that Ross and Monica are Jewish. Mm-hmm. And we also find out, it is alluded to, that Rachel is also Jewish.
But they never actually say, Rachel never actually says she's Jewish.
Yeah, it's never actually directly said, but there are interviews with some of the creators that indicate that yes, Rachel is Jewish.
Yeah.
Or like they wrote the character to be Jewish.
Yeah.
And it's just a thing that was happening in the 90s. And you see it along with Seinfeld and a few other series in the 90s, that there are Jewish characters included in the show, but there's never any real celebration of any sort of Jewish holiday, and everyone just celebrates Christian holidays that come up throughout the year.
Right.
And anyway, there's been some criticism out there about this concept. Emily and I grew up celebrating Christmas. We grew up in a Catholic family. And so this is something that wouldn't really kind of cross our mind, but like this is like an ongoing, like this was a theme that was happening, especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also a thing and it's not just the 90s, because this has definitely evolved now too. If you watch most television shows now, that there's either two portrayals of Jewish characters. One in which their like religion is basically erased, and two, which happens in this episode. And two is that they are very like stereotypical Jewish. So they really play into stereotypes of Jewish people, and both of those are problematic. So it's like, and it's interesting because we talk a lot about diversity on this podcast. On the last episode, we talked about ways in which we can talk about diversity. And so it's interesting that in this episode, we come again to another instance of total erasure of Monica and Ross's, and maybe we're not 100% sure Rachel's Judaism. And then on the flip side, there's so many other like super stereotypical representations of Jewish people that is like super harmful as well. Like if you look at the TV show New Girl, one of the characters, Schmidt, he's Jewish, and every single reference to him being Jewish is like stereotypes about how he's like cheap, about how they're just like really not okay things, and they never really allude to his religion as something that's like important to him or like part of his identity. They just like make jokes around it, and especially they make jokes around his looks related to him being Jewish, which is super problematic.
Yeah.
And
I think
it's like anti-Semitic. Like that's not even just problematic. Like
yeah, and I think that like stereotypes like aside, I think also a central issue is just recognizing that there is a very large privilege when your religion is the official religion of the media, like the country that you live in and the media that you consume, and like you just become sort of central, and everything kind of revolves around you. Like the holidays that you take for your religious holidays are like the ones that are like usually paid holidays, and they're like the main holidays, and you're going to have time off, and you're not going to have to be pulled out of school, and like all those sort of things. And it just sort of, I think that if I wasn't Catholic or raised Catholic, I probably would have appreciated having some representation in the TV shows that I watch.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chandler invited Janice.
Well, okay. And then Phoebe also does this really great plug where she's like, I want to be with him day and night and night and day and special occasions.
So good.
And it's so cute.
Phoebe.
And then you have like one of the best lines, I think, of this episode where Chandler is like, I snapped. I didn't say it was a good idea.
I snapped.
Which is like, I just feel it's very relatable.
Yeah. Oh my god. Totally.
I didn't say it was a good idea. I just said that I did it.
Yes, I put Joey has the best outfit in the world, and it's because he's wearing his little elf costume, and I just think it's so cute where he's like, oh, Chandler, like, you want to say something? Like he's kind of like, I give you the floor to make fun of me. Like he's just, and again, this is another way in which you see that Joey is Joey is rarely embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like, whereas
he's set in himself.
He's set in himself, whatever. I don't know if that means he's set in his masculinity or if he's just set in who he is. And in some ways that's bad because, in a lot of ways it's bad because it means he's less, open to changing his shittier aspects of himself. But I think at this moment, I think it's really cute where he's just like, make fun of me all you want, man. I'm an elf. It's cool. And
I'm fine with it.
He even lifts his foot and like shakes his little bells on his foot. And like, he's like, even the shoes, it's just so good.
So just so you know, 20% of the people in our audience said that they have been a Santa's elf or other related character as a job at one point.
Oh, wow. That's very exciting.
I know. I wish I could have gone and seen them.
That's cute. I think it's so funny here how like Ross has a fight with Marcel. And he's like, I said some things, he threw some feces. And then Ross is like, okay, I'm just realizing something. Do you think that Ross is like kind of almost like he's like he got a monkey to test run being a dad?
Oh, interesting.
Like he just has got like he's very emotionally attached to Marcel. So, which like everyone's emotionally attached to their pets, but he's emotionally attached to Marcel as if Marcel was a human.
I think it's really Ross clearly needs to see a therapist, and it's repeated throughout the entire 10 seasons that like he definitely needs some support. But
that's a nice way of putting it.
But I guess it's hard to tease that apart because I would say, like, part of the thing that I wanted to talk about with Ross and his relationship with Marcel has a lot to do with, it's clear that he's, like, paralleling a relationship. But then there is, like, inside of it, sort of like this nuances of childness that, like, that this is a child that he's taking care of. And I feel like it's just very representative of, like, Ross probably being a very codependent partner.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I'm just going to go through the entire storyline of Marcel and Ross.
Okay. Sure.
Just, I guess, like, near the end, when he's sort of like, it's just so hard to, like, accept that, you know, someone that you love so much doesn't love you back. You know, a lot of people will sort of say that this is, like, a parallel to Rachel. But at the same time, like, I do think that, like, this cannot be compared to Rachel because it is like a child, right? And just like a child and a pet, this animal or human is entirely dependent on you. And the entire time, Ross is acting like a victim in the relationship, right? Like, he's so, like, self-centered in it. It's like, I just want it to love me so much. And it's sort of like when you have a kid or if you have a pet, the reality is that, like, you can't get them because you want to receive love from them. Like, that just creates a toxic dynamic. Like, you are the person with all the power. They are entirely a victim to everything that you do because they are 100% dependent on you catering to them and offering them life and they're getting their needs met. And so kind of having this self-centered kind of victim sort of mentality within it, and, like, this sort of, like, feeling bad for himself in the situation is, like, a really toxic dynamic.
I have to disagree. I can't believe it's happening on this show because I don't think that's ever happened. But
I feel like we've disagreed before.
Okay, but
you're allowed to disagree with me.
Okay, good. I don't need your permission for me to disagree.
No, you do. I allow it.
I feel like it's incomparable to compare a monkey to a human child. Not in, like, a specious way, but I mean in the sense that, like, a human can communicate to you and a human requires a very different kind of taking care of than an animal does.
Ironically, Emily's more vegetarian than me right now.
Yeah, I guess I just mean in the sense, I'm not meaning it in the sense that, like, animals don't deserve rights and, like, being treated properly. And, like, the first thing I thought of when I saw this episode was, like, how well was that monkey treated? You know, like, but I think that it's very different to compare an abuse of, like, a parent and a child to the abuse of a human and an animal. One is not better than the other or worse than the other, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is that they look very different. And so, like, I don't feel as though Ross, hoping an animal, cares for him, because usually when people get pets, they want the pet to like them.
What if it doesn't? Like, you know,
like, you're still obligated to take care of it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I don't think he's, like, I think the whole point is that he's, like, he's being whiny, and it's, like, showing how whiny Ross is and how completely, like, codependent he is.
That's my whole point, right? Is that, like,
but
if we're going
I don't think you could say that, like, you can compare that to child abuse.
Okay, I mean, I didn't go so far to say that.
But you were alluding to it.
I was. But I do want to point out, though, like my point was to point out the parallel between blurring the lines between romantic relationship and taking care of something.
Right.
Like, it is dependent on you, which blurring that line immediately leads into a codependent relationship.
Right.
And then you have, you know, Marcel that's sort of taking on this position of both being sort of like child, but then also kind of in a relationship with them. And but then at the same time is 100% has no autonomy in the situation.
Right.
And I think it's not whether or not it's the same, it's more of a reflection of Ross's character and how he is in relationships and how he's, like, I find it's very much Ross in a nutshell, where it's sort of like, he's sort of like self-centered in the situation, more focused in on, like, how this thing isn't loving him the way that he wants this thing to love him, and is, like, you know, very jealous already, and, like,
Yeah, Ross is the most jealous person in the world. I don't know. Like, I think, like, I think that it's just very humorous, this whole storyline. Like, I think that there's other things that happen in this show that are, like, humorous and severely problematic, but I feel like this is just humorous and not necessarily problematic because it's not a child.
I'm not pointing out whether or not it's problematic. I'm just pointing out this is a reflection of Ross.
Right. Yeah.
And if it does translate to him in romantic relationships, then it is something he should work on.
And yes, this animal totally depends on him for its safety, for making sure it's fed, for, you know, and if Ross ever held a grudge and, like, didn't give food to Marcel, but, like, because he's mad that he doesn't juggle for him or something, that would be, like, very abusive. But this shows more that Ross is just, like, so pathetic. Like, he says at the beginning of the episode, he's like, I think by the time, you know, you get to a certain age where having a roommate is pathetic. And then here he spends the entire episode being so pathetic with his monkey. Like, he's just
living
like
without a roommate.
Living without a roommate, and it would just be, like, way less pathetic if he just got a roommate
instead of a monkey.
Except I would feel so bad for whoever had to live with Ross. But, like,
it's such a good point that's like such a interesting contrast that's made in the show. It's like,
I just think,
you'd be so less pathetic if you filled your void with a roommate.
Like, I just think that he's just so desperate for love. That was a good conversation. Okay, let's go talk about next scene.
With David.
We're in I put scene 4, laboratory. It's very not clear what he does, what kind of science he does.
And so we have a very gendered situation, right? Where, like, Phoebe is
interesting.
Kind of like, why haven't you kissed me yet? When you're sort of like, Phoebe, you're a badass. Why don't you just kiss him?
But also you have to talk about that thing because consent.
Yeah, exactly. Ideally, this is a really great way for it to happen.
Yeah, it's so cute. She's like, were you planning on kissing me ever? And David is so nerdy, geeky, cute here. Yeah.
And I totally love what he says, like the kiss complex that happened there. Yeah. Which, not necessarily related to kisses, but just in general, where it's sort of like, oh, I didn't do this thing. And then I was like, okay, I have to, like, make it a bigger gesture to make it, like, worth the fact that I haven't done this yet. Yeah. And then it just builds and gets bigger and bigger and bigger in your head. And I know that I do that all the time for everything.
Like, you forget someone's birthday, and so then you're like, okay, because I forgot their birthday, I have to do something epic for their birthday, but you know doing something epic takes so much longer.
And you clearly didn't have enough time in the first place because you forgot their birthday.
Yeah, and so then now you, like, plan something forever, you're planning and it's epic, but then you never end up getting around to doing it, and the longer you put it off, the more epic it has to be. Yeah, so that's real. It's a very relatable thing that he says.
And so then instead they just talked about it, and they came to a really great place.
It's very cute. This moment is very cute.
I love them. Like, them. Like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I have such a crush on David. And then I'm like, no, I just really love them. Yeah. Like, as an entity. Like, I have a crush on their relationship.
Cute. Yeah, totally. And then they have this really, really cute kiss here, and I think it's very nice. Like, he's like, should I pick you up and throw you, or should you hop? I'll hop.
Like, she's so giddy about it too. Yeah, no, I think you're a sweeper.
I think you're a sweeper. Yeah, it's cute. So next scene, they're back in the coffee house, and they're realizing that so many people have dates. So Chandler has a date. Joey's asked a woman from work. Paolo is coming home early for Rachel, and Monica asked her ex-boyfriend Fun Bobby, who we'd never know about. But again, this is another one of those moments where we allude to Monica's past partners without actually meeting them or knowing anything about them.
Yeah, and he comes back.
Wow, spoiler.
And it's not that big of a spoiler. It's fine, guys.
But it's just so funny in the episode that he comes back and his name is Fun Bobby, and then in this episode he's just very not fun. I also love Chandler here. I think one of my favorite lines, you said your favorite line was I snapped, but I think one of my favorite line is like, Chandler's like, Fun Bobby? Like your ex-boyfriend Fun Bobby? And then Joey says, this is a very intelligent line for Joey. I'm a little bit impressed by him. He's like, what? You know another Fun Bobby? And then Chandler goes, I happen to know a Fun Bob. I just think that's such a great line. So Ross is alone again, which leads to him being more pathetic. He's the only one without a date, and he's so whiny, and he's just continuously upset. Like, he's just, to be fair, like, Ross has had a rough year.
Yeah, he has.
Like, he's getting divorced, and then he's also getting divorced, and his partner is having a baby, and is not going to raise it with his own baby, which sucks because it's a crumbling of his picturesque life that he wanted so badly. And now he had to get a monkey, and he's just sad. He's just very sad.
Yeah.
And so, like, part of me feels really bad for Ross, but part of me is like, ugh, Ross.
Therapy's cool, kids.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Max comes in.
Yes. And Max is like just a bit of a douche in this moment when he's sort of like completely inconsiderate of Phoebe and like I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Is it inconsiderate of Phoebe? I mean, like, is he inconsiderate of Phoebe? Like, I don't know. Like, he's really excited about something, and he's like, where's my friend? This is so exciting. This is something we've been planning and working towards, and we applied for this months before you even existed. Like, this is something that's really important to us, and, like, he's upset that... Like, I would be pretty upset if, like, I had planned something with my friend. This is, again, one of those moments in which people put romantic relationships above friendships because, like, they clearly have a close friendship because they're hanging out outside of work. Mm-hmm. They were having a coffee outside of work. And then they got granted this grant. Yeah,
I'm not saying that he doesn't have the right to be disappointed about David, but just, I feel like in that moment when he comes in and he just, like, shares this news with Phoebe, I don't know.
Well, he's just kind of a dick. But, like, I don't know if it's inconsiderate. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, he says we're going to Minsk, and it's in Russia, which it's not in Russia. It's in Belarus.
Google Maps, folks. I think it still existed in 1994.
So, yes, 3 years, all expenses paid. That's pretty sweet. Like, I'm sorry, but I would be pretty pissed if someone was giving up, like, 3 years, all expenses paid for, like, this work job that we've both been working and aiming for like someone that they met 2 weeks ago. Like, I'd be pretty peeved.
Yeah, so we're just flipping to the next scene, right? Where
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have so many mixed feelings about this because as someone who's like totally like don't compromise your career for, you know, the possibility of a relationship that you've only been in for like 2 weeks, but at the same time
you just love David so much.
I just love them together so much. Yeah. You know, like I think that they do such a good job of showing how much potential this relationship has. You know, and not in like the, oh, I'm just so in love with you kind of like, like just swept off your feet kind of way, but in like an actual like connection way where like they match so well. They're like, they sync really well. They care about each other in the same way. It just seems like it could have been something really solid for them.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting sad talking about it, guys.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, and I think it's tough because like it was a very different era. Like long distance relationships are a lot more doable now than
I mean, like you say that, but at the same time, when Elias was back in Morocco for a year and you were in Montreal, like that was hard enough with that time difference. And I believe that Minsk is even more of a time difference.
Totally. But I think that maybe maybe they could have like planned to start long distance and then see where that goes. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I think that would have been a lot more doable in 2020 than it would be in 1994 to like, you know, like you have to be a little bit more final in 1994, you know?
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's an awkward situation. And it's also shitty too, because then David is like, you decide. And I think we had a discussion about this before we started recording, but I think like in that moment I was like, oh, it's kind of shitty that like David's putting the onus on her to decide.
But interesting. So we had this debate.
Yeah.
But then also, he already had stated that he was not going. He had already made that decision. And so, like, decide
was like him more checking how she felt about it, I think.
Yeah.
Like, how does she feel about him staying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in general, you know,
Mm-hmm.
don't make your partner decide your life decisions for you.
Well, yeah, but it's hard because, like, it's also...
Yeah, those decisions are not easy, that's for sure.
All right, so we're back in Monica's apartment. The New Year's party is in full swing.
And Monica is in a gown.
Monica is very overdressed, and or everyone else in the room is very underdressed. One of two things is happening here. Monica looks like she could go to the Oscars in that dress. Like, what is happening? Like,
I also really appreciate, in our Netflix watch party, Emily was sort of like, is Monica super overdressed? And I love how Kayla was like, that's not possible. Just be more dressier. That's fine.
That's true. Yeah, no, for sure. But it's very weird that she's like in this super silvery dress and like everyone else is kind of like don't get me wrong, I love getting dressed up for New Year's. I don't get dressed up for anything ever. But I love getting dressed up for New Year's Eve. I think it's like one of my favorite things to get dressed up for. And so like I feel the Monica vibe, but it just like I almost feel bad that there's not people that are more dressed up for her party. Or maybe that was just not super dressed up for the 90s.
I mean, we have Phoebe, who's dressed up in a way...
It's like a medieval dress.
Yeah, but it's like a full-length gown situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all the way down
She
to...
is so funny.
Feet. Yeah. Like, and that's like, she's pretty dolled up.
But Rachel ends up coming out, and she's wearing, like, a short black dress with, like, black leggings. Like...
But that's possibly because it's the only thing that could go over her face gently.
I want to take a moment to talk about a brief, very obnoxious thing that I'm very sick of hearing in the world.
Okay.
Yeah. When Janice eats some dip, and then she's like, don't tell me what's in it. The diet starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let me unpack this shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Eat the dip, Janice. That's all I'm going to say. Eat the dip. Don't let that diet start tomorrow. Don't let diet start ever. Because fun fact, 98% of people who go on diets regain the weight and more. And also, yo-yo dieting has really intense effects on your heart. And also, dieting is fucked. I don't have a better speech planned. But
it was pretty well done, I think.
Intuitive eating. Go look it up. It's a great concept. Yeah, that's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Also Janice is the best.
Also Janice. Janice, I love Janice. Every time I see her, I'm just like, my heart explodes. I think she's so great. And again, like Kayla said in the watch party, why does she like Chandler?
I know.
Okay, I was thinking of this though. And I feel like going through this episodes for this podcast again, I think I kind of see it. I kind of see how they could be an interesting dynamic, the two of them. If Chandler could erase the side of him that he is completely fearful of commitment and doesn't actually want to open up to another person.
Okay, so you know how you're talking about codependency? I feel like Janice is very... like, has decided that Chandler is, like, so important to her. And I also think that Chandler is a pathetic mess. And so Janice has taken on Chandler as a pathetic mess.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I also want to point out that it's interesting that the show, in all of this, I feel the way that the portrayal is done is that Janice is a pathetic mess, and they make fun of her. And they never turn around and really actually look at Chandler, who is the pathetic mess.
Yeah.
Also in the situation. Like...
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I agree with you, for sure. I also wouldn't say that she's a pathetic mess. I think she's, like, very much, like, she knows who she is. She's, like, sad that it doesn't correspond well with Chandler. But, like, I think she's, like... I don't think Janice ever really apologizes for who she is.
No.
Like, she's just Janice. Take her or leave her, you know? And
Chandler
does that multiple times. But I wanted to say something else. Like, he even says that line where he's like, he's like, Janice.
Which is how he breaks up with her every time.
Every time. He's like, I'm sorry you misunderstood. Like, dude.
Yeah, that's
you
it. That's
invited your ex-girlfriend, who you had a pretty messy breakup with, to a New Year's Eve party with the intention of kissing her at midnight. So clearly it was a date and not just a friend invite. And yet you weren't expecting her to think that maybe you guys were getting back together. Like,
yeah,
that's a weird thing to expect of an ex. Like,
I know. And that's exactly what I'm saying, right? They're spinning it as though, like, he was the reasonable one in this situation, and she's the one that's, like, crazy.
Well, I'm
using the word crazy, like, because it's, like, that's how they portray women, right?
No,
like,
I know, but she's a little intense.
Okay, I am not going to deny
like,
that.
she wants to take a photo and put, like, a line underneath it in glitter, reunited.
Okay,
like...
also, though, something that Chandler knows about Janice, she is either 100% or 0%. She's nowhere in between, right?
Which is why you don't invite an ex like that to a New Year's Eve party. Like, you just don't. That's a rough choice, Ross. Which is why Chandler, which is why he says, I'm not saying it was a good decision. I'm saying I snapped. Oh, man. So, anyways. I also wrote that I don't think it's valid that Ross consistently brings his monkey over to Monica's house when she has expressed multiple times that she is not comfortable with the monkey in her house.
Yeah.
I don't think it's valid. I would be pretty pissed if I told someone multiple times not to bring their animal into my house and they consistently continue to not listen to me and do it anyways.
I think it would become a continuous argument between us. I mean, allergies aside. Right. Like, let's say there was no allergies.
But, like, the monkey's peed in multiple places and, like, continuously breaks things and destroys things. Like, I'd be pissed.
Right.
Like, it's not like a child.
I'm just trying to think, like, if I had a monkey and wanted to come to your house with my monkey regularly and you didn't want my monkey there, I don't know.
You'd be mad at me?
I want my monkey to come. You can't just leave a monkey alone all the time in an apartment and then everyone chooses to hang out at Monica's apartment all the time.
Yeah, but maybe you should have thought of that before you got a monkey, Quinn.
He was a rescue.
Okay, let's play this out. If you got a monkey, first of all, I'd be fine if your monkey came over to my house, but I'd be pretty pissed if your monkey consistently peed on the table and then you didn't care that much.
But the monkey was more embarrassed than... Just kidding, guys. Sometimes I just want the license to be Ross. You know, like, he's just so self-centered and whiny, and I just want to channel the Ross in me sometimes.
Yeah, also, I don't think you should get a monkey.
Because it's okay. I feel like I realize I don't want a monkey. I'll get a parrot.
I love you very much, but I feel like you would act very similarly to your monkey as Ross acts to his monkey. You'd be really upset if I taught it a new trick, and then you weren't with the monkey first to see the trick.
I would totally have a codependent relationship with my monkey.
You would. So, loop that back around, not the same thing. I win! I win the argument from earlier. Anyways.
So, yes, but Ross can afford more therapy than I can.
Okay, true. He lives alone in an apartment in New York. You know what, Ross? You should get a roommate and use that extra money to pay for therapy.
Yes. Snap.
There would not be 10 seasons of Friends, though.
Oh my god, he'd be so much more tolerable.
Oh man. Anyways, okay, so Rachel comes in, and she has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And shout out to the makeup artists for this moment.
But again, like, this is so random.
Also, Rachel is so cute in this, though. She's like, and then I blew my attack whistle, and then I fell, and I hit my head on the concrete, and my whistle cut my lip.
It's just so violent.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I just,
And then she's like, are people eating my dip?
She's so sweet. She's
sweet.
still so naive at this point.
Yeah,
and I actually want to loop back to, like, the first scene, or the second scene of the episode, when she's like, so what are we doing for New Year's? And everyone like attacks her for it. Like, she clearly is so oblivious. She's never been alone on New Year's. She doesn't understand the implications. Like, she's just very new to this world still.
Do you think it's like a big deal to like be alone on New Year's?
Like, I don't think so.
Like, I mean, like, I know there's like this big thing of like, you have to kiss someone at New Year's. But like, what, yeah, like, what is that? Like, let's continue
So
going.
9% of people said that kissing someone at New Year's was important to them, and 91% of our viewers said no.
Okay, interesting. I probably always like having a kiss on New Year's. I think it's a very cute thing. Like starting the new year with someone and being like it's just like a moment of love, and it sucks that it's always like romantic love, but I really value having New Year's celebrations that are like about family and people who are close to you and like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like as time has gone on, what's become really important for me is more bringing, it's not about like a specific kiss with anyone in particular, it's about bringing in the new year with the people who you want to be in it most with. It's like almost like a moment of intention and like something, there's just something very ceremonial about it.
Why would you invite your exes to something like that? Like,
I know.
Monica invites Fun Bobby, whose grandfather died, which is also very sad. We didn't touch on that.
God.
But like, she invites her ex, and Chandler invites his ex. Like, why would you invite your ex to like a wedding that you have to go to? Don't invite your ex to like a celebration of bringing into the new year. Like, Phoebe has the total opposite. We can segue into that. Like, Phoebe has that beautiful speech with David where she's like, I don't want to start the new year with you if I can't finish it. Meanwhile, Chandler over here is like, I don't give a fuck who I'm kissing.
See, Chandler is a pathetic mess.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting though, because the way that the show ends, again, it loops back around and it's all of them together.
Yeah.
And it's like,
they come full circle.
Yeah, it's very cute. So we're going to talk about the scene with David and Phoebe?
Yeah, we can talk about that right now.
It's so heartbreaking.
I thought we just talked about it.
I mean, you breezed over it.
You
didn't give it the proper acknowledgement that it needs. Okay, I just think that, first of all, was it Casablanca, the poster that's in the background?
I don't know.
Okay, there's a poster that looks like Casablanca that's in the background. So next time that you watch it, take a look, and they're basically like shadowed of themselves. They're like reaching out to sort of like kiss each other. And then there's this beautiful poster of like kind of mimicking that or shadowing that in the background. And it's just like Lisa Kudrow's acting in this scene just like shines so intensely. It's such an intimate moment, and she does so well of like making it silly and quirky and funny, but also so deeply heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like, there's just such a theme in this show.
Yeah.
Right? There's just so many moments that are a very confusing at times mix between something being really funny and quirky and silly, and also being really gut-wrenching or heart-throbby or just like really emotional and meaningful. And it's just very much like what life is about, right? Like nothing is just one emotion at one time. You can be really happy and really sad at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, life.
Should he have stayed?
No. I don't think so. Because then it would have started their relationship off on so much pressure on their relationship.
Yeah, it's very true.
If it's not successful, then he gave up this huge thing. Okay, I want to talk about something that happens in the next moment, in the next scene. Chandler and Janice has left now, and Chandler's like desperately looking for someone to kiss at midnight, and he's talking to that woman.
Oh my gosh.
And then he says, and then I was bit by a peacock, and then he's like, please kiss me at midnight. But this is the continuity thing I want to talk about, because if you recall, in the one with the blackout, Phoebe says to Monica, she says, I'm always the last to know. I was the last one to know about Chandler getting bitten by that peacock at the zoo. And so they just referenced that. And that's a very weird, subtle thing that, like, is not a thing that Friends does very often. Like a small kind of inside joke, continuity thing.
That if you don't catch it, like,
yeah.
So,
anyways, that's really funny. And I actually did not catch that myself. Again, thank you, fandom, for pointing that out. And then Joey's lady, Sandy, we didn't really talk about that. Sandy brings her 2 kids.
Oh, right. We didn't even talk about that. That was super intense.
It was weird. They're all standing in the kitchen upset because now they have no dates and no one to kiss. And then Chandler says the obnoxious thing of, there are 3 guys and 3 girls, moi, moi, moi. Which is ridiculous. And yeah, obviously, like, you know, whatever, they're all straight, so it's a thing that, you know, makes sense, whatever.
Medium, but yeah.
Medium. But, like, it's also, yeah, whatever. And, like, I get the theory, you know, like, hey, we're friends, come on, like, let's kiss at midnight. We all want to kiss at midnight, which they do later on.
Which, again, though, okay, aside from what you're saying, because yes, they do later on, but then, again, Joey being the one who's most willing to cross that line of, like, 2 seconds ago it stated, like, men, women, we can kiss. And then Joey's the one who's the most, like, solid in his masculinity to kind of bend that boundary and step over it, yeah. And he kisses Chandler.
Chandler's like, someone kiss me, somebody kiss me, somebody kiss me, and then Joey kisses him. He didn't specify.
Exactly. And I think that, like, again, this is, like, the theme, right, where Joey's much more willing to, like, step over that line, and Chandler is, like, so taken aback.
Insecure. And yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But it's such a memorable moment.
Yeah, so great.
Yeah.
Great. And so then, that's it. That's all.
That's everything. I think before we sign out and off, I just want to do a little bit of a shout out, because I've been noticing that we have we're like permanently kind of international right now, our podcast. So I want to give out a shout out to San Jose, California, Melbourne, Victoria, Norton Shores, Michigan, London, Ontario, never mind. Yeah, well, you know, sure. London, Ontario.
Hi, Alexi.
Clichy, Ile-de-France, which is just France. I actually had to look that up.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And then Washington, Virginia.
Wow.
And then, of course, everyone in Peterborough and Montreal and all over
We're
Canada.
International, guys.
But, yeah, definitely appreciating that we have some solid viewers from all around the world.
Listeners.
Yes, listeners.
Great. So that's it. That's all. Remember that if you can give us as low as $2 a month, you can head over to our Patreon page. We would really appreciate it. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into making this podcast happen, anywhere from 10 to 20 hours of our time each a week, plus all of the cost of actually even putting the podcast into the interwebs also costs us money. So any amount that you can contribute is super appreciated. Also, I want to add that if you can't financially contribute to us, no stress, but we would really appreciate if you went over to our iTunes and left us a review, because that's another way that you can support us without spending a dime.
Yeah, share us with with your friends. That would be really great.
Yeah.
And then also I want to say, like, right now we're trying to cover our costs, but our dream is to have some paid interviews with people down the line.
Yeah.
Whether I have a dream of Laverne Cox coming in later seasons.
We're going to need to make a lot of money on our Patreon page to get Laverne Cox on. But yes.
But also, like, how great would it be to have a conversation with David Crane? Thinking big, guys. Thinking big.
Think big. Yeah, totally. And you can follow me individually. My name is Emily. You can find me on my website, emilybyoga.com, or on Instagram at emilybyoga. That's Emily with an I-E, not a Y.
And then Quinn K. Brunet on Instagram, and then also quinnkbrunet.com. And I'm about to roll out some private online yoga classes. Awesome. So keep an eye out for that. Keep deconstructing the media you consume, guys.
And diversifying the media you consume.
Yes.
Woo!